here with Ann Wheaton, animal welfare activist and a rescue advocate, as well as the author of the book Piggy and Pug. First of all, thank you so much for taking time to sit down with me. A few years ago here at Denver Comic Con, I interviewed a friend of yours, Bonnie Burton. You picked very good friends, by the way.
Yes.
And she told me some of the antics you two have gotten up to, and ever since I've been thrilled to talk to you and really wanting to talk to you, so thank you so much for making that happen today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I was excited to meet you because I saw your interview that you did with Bonnie.
Thank you so much. But yeah, Bonnie taught me about the Vandalize movement that you two started together, which I am thrilled about. In fact, when I interviewed her, I put some googly eyes on the Denver Comic Con sign, this one behind you, and so I put some googly eyes on a sign like that.
Nice.
And it was awesome and amazing, and I just wanted to thank you for creating the movement.
Yes.
And
I actually started that. I made that hashtag because I went to WonderCon in Anaheim years ago, and I was like, oh God, I want to put these up somewhere. But like Bonnie and I were putting them up everywhere, but I thought I should have a hashtag so people could find that. And then because I'm all about puns, it's vandal eyes, not vandalize. But it's a little, vandalizing things with googly eyes. So
yeah, it's amazing. And I feel like I might be reading a little too much into it, but it feels like the movement is about not taking things seriously. Because how can you take anything seriously when you have googly eyes on it?
Exactly. It makes everything better. That's what it is. Yes.
It does. And like just taking joy in the smaller things in life. When we were in London, actually, I saw a bunch of Vandalized, and it was amazing. And like, I definitely wouldn't have noticed that if I didn't know about the movement. So it just made me more of an attentive person. And it's just so weird and cool that this movement about putting googly eyes on things has like made me a more attentive person. And it was amazing.
It's because you start to see things that you're like, oh, if that had eyes, it would look like a face. Or that it makes things better, happier. Yeah, I think I saw online somewhere, someone posted a picture, I think it was in London, it was a blue trash can that it looked like it was open on the top, but it was eyes right over the big opening on the side, so it made it look like a big mouth. Oh, so good, so good.
That was awesome. But yeah, when I was doing my research for this interview, I found a lot of really interesting things that you are passionate about. And I love getting to talk to people about things that they're passionate about, especially if they're things that I'm passionate about as well. And you are really passionate about shelter and rescue animals. And I think it's amazing and it's really important to me. And can you share a little bit about why it's so important to you?
Well, so my very first rescue animal was an orange tabby cat that followed me home when I was 5. And I found out that the people up the street from us had moved away and left him. And so for me, as a 5-year-old, I didn't think, oh, we got to get this cat back to these people. I saw this cat that was like a domesticated animal that wanted another family. And so I thought of, him making that journey to go out and find a family. And because of that, knowing that he was abandoned, I started to become more aware of animals in need. And I basically have acquired my animals my whole life were ones that I found. But then I think it was probably 9 years ago. No, it was more than that. Because 9 years ago was when I adopted my first dog from a shelter. So I had a dog she was 4 months old, and I found her abandoned at a bus stop. And I took her in, and I took her to the vet because she seemed, I wasn't sure if she was sick or what was wrong with her, but I guess puppies can have depression. That is a normal thing, but she had like really bad puppy depression. And we found out that, she was really afraid of men for a while, and she may have been abused. She hadn't lost any of her puppy teeth, and her nails were really long, like she didn't get walks or anything, so didn't wear her nails down. And we had her for 8 years. She was the greatest dog. We named her Ferris, and she was a great dog. And we went away overnight and came back, and she had a cancer lump in her armpit, and she lived 4 more weeks. And it was awful to lose her so soon, because she should have lived like 12 to 14 years, and she was only 8. And so I got a pamphlet in the mail from our local shelter, the Pasadena Humane Society, and they were doing a fundraiser called the Wiggle Waggle Walk. And we decided to create a team, so we were Team Ferris, to do a fundraiser in her memory, and we raised a ton of money.
Oh,
and then when we went to do the walk, we had another dog, but she had torn a ligament in her knee, so she couldn't do the walk with us. So they asked us to walk a shelter dog for adoption awareness. They brought us this black and white pit bull mix, who was 7 months old, and he had been at the shelter for a week, and he had this little Adopt Me bandana on, and I thought it was really cool that they were not just doing, it wasn't just about raising money, because it was, you go and everyone would bring their dogs, and it was a big walk around the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, but that they had things to do, promote adoption awareness, and things about like education on animal welfare, classes to train your animals and all this stuff. And so I became more involved with them then. And so that was 9 years ago. And like I am now a director at that shelter. I've been there for doing that for 4.5 years, but I was involved with them for that first Wiggle Waggle Walk, and I did it for 5 years before they were like, okay, this lady obviously loves to work with animals and do stuff with the shelter, so they had me come on board with them. So
amazing.
yeah,
I recently moved out to LA, and I wanted to visit the Pasadena Humane Society to prepare for this, but I would have to come home with like 3 dogs and 8 cats.
Oh yeah,
I can't go without getting more pets.
yeah.
But
That was an interesting thing, because I'd always, every animal I found I kept. So I just thought, oh God, I can't go do a thing with the shelter, because I felt like it was going to be upsetting to me to see a bunch of animals in kennels, or that I would feel like I needed to bring all of them home. And then when I started to learn about, this prevents animals like my dog that was at a bus stop, or, whatever, like it gets them off the streets, and they get medical care, and they get food, and that being in there gives them a way greater chance of finding a family than the ones that are just roaming, that might not have that opportunity. So I looked at it that way. Now when I see them, I'm like, oh yay, you're here, because the little signs on the shelter, like on the kennels, will say where they're found, and sometimes it's in the middle of a busy intersection. And so when I see that they're there, and then like that Pasadena Humane Society has a very high adoption success rate, and so I see them and I'm happy that they're there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I want to come out and volunteer, probably when I'm old enough. I don't think 12 is old enough.
There's a lot of different programs for kids for different ages, and there's they have a critter camp in summer. They do a week-long camp. Yeah, and then I think it's 14. I think you're almost 12.
I am turning 13 in a month.
13, that's right. So I think it's 14 that you can be the volunteer program.
Nice.
And it's cool because you learn behavior, you learn training, you learn how to care for them, you do everything. You learn how to clean the kennels, you learn how to do all that stuff.
I want to be a behavioral zoologist one day. And
that's great.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
But I have friends who volunteer at shelters, and it's been something I wanted to do for a while. And so if we still live over there, which we probably will by the time I'm 14, that's definitely something I'll look at. Maybe I'll make my 14th birthday going out and applying.
Yes, it's funny. I did a fundraiser, and my name was just put in a drawing to win a birthday party for kids, and I won it.
Oh, good.
But my kids are in their 20s, so I gave it to my friend. Her son is going this summer. He'll be turning 10. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so they do a whole day, a whole birthday thing, lots of animal arts and crafts and a birthday cake, and you get a tour of the shelter and stuff.
That's amazing.
So yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have literally never been alive for a second without a pet. I usually have a dog and a cat, or 2 cats at one point, and they've all been rescues. I love them all so much, and I was wondering if you think that animals know that you rescued them.
I feel like they do. I definitely feel like they do. The dog that I found at the bus stop, she was 4 months old when I got her. We did do a basic puppy training with her, but she was so smart and so really attached to me. But my kids were little. I think my kids were probably, I want to say 7 and 9 when we found her. And, my kids would go running out the front door of the house, and they would forget to shut the door. And she would go out and she would never leave the yard. And I never trained her to do that. She just never left. And one time we had a gardener who was mowing our backyard, and he left the side gate open. And then I guess she walked out into the front, and we didn't know. I knew she had been in the backyard, but he left, and I just heard barking at my front door, and it was like she was outside, like, hey, let me back in there, I have it good in there. So she just never, she was so great just like on her own with that. And yeah, like the animals that I have adopted that I have now, they're so affectionate, and they're great, and I do definitely feel like they know.
I love shelter animals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't actually know where my current cat comes from. We adopted him when he was about 2 years old. They didn't even know. And so that's a really interesting thing. I don't know where he was or what led up to him being adopted, but we have him now, and we love him.
Yeah, I
He's
know.
kind of mean.
It is. Oh yeah, yeah. Because they're cats. You're their staff. Like you wait on them. It is weird to me. Like my dog Marlo that I have now, she was 4 months when we adopted her, and we were actually at the shelter when she was brought in, when someone found her. And so she was just filthy dirty, and you could see her ribs and her hip bones, and she saw us, and I was like, puppy! She was so cute, and she somersaulted into my husband's feet, and I was like, I'm not going to pet that dog because I'm going to want to bring it home, but I was like, Mike, she is so adorable. And then my husband couldn't stop thinking about her, so the next day we put on so what happens is when an animal is found, the first thing they do is check for a microchip. She didn't have one, so they put her on their website, so if somebody owns the animal, it gives them a chance to claim them. So they basically sit for 5 days waiting to make sure somebody doesn't own them. So in the meantime, you can do a wait list. And she didn't even have a wait list. And
Really?
yeah, and she is the best dog. She is adorable, and she has so much personality, and she's a ball of affection, and she loves Bonnie. When Bonnie comes over, she is like, she whimpers and she jumps to the couch and she rolls on her back so Bonnie can scratch her belly.
But yeah, speaking of Marlo, you were nice enough to give me a copy of A Guide to Being a Dog by your dog, Seamus.
Seamus Wheaton.
Translated by your husband.
Yes.
And Marlo is in this book because Seamus is teaching her how to be a dog.
Yes.
And this book is so cute. It's super funny as well. We were all laughing out loud in the hotel room last night when we were reading it, because so much of it applies to my dog.
Yeah.
It's so perfect. And you even did a little potograph.
Yes. I had a stamp made of Seamus's actual footprint, a rubber stamp, and so he gets his potograph.
So cute. I love it so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, you actually said that it was charity only, and it was for the Wiggle Waggle Walk that you mentioned earlier.
It was, yeah. So I had done, so the first time I did a fundraiser for them, after my dog Ferris passed away, we just talked about doing it to support it, to do it in her memory, raise a lot of money that way. The next year, I did a rescue pet calendar with celebrities, pictures with them, with their animals. I did that 2 years in a row, and that raised $75,000 total for them. And and then I was like, wow, like we can actually do a thing that makes a difference and do something cool instead of just being like, hey, give money to a thing, because that ends up happening. The older you get, the more you'll realize that happens literally everywhere. There's people always doing fundraisers for various things, which are all really great causes, and everyone tries to help as much as they can, but you can't do it everywhere. So I realized if you can focus on a couple of things that are really meaningful to you, do something that in return is meaningful to someone else, it's beneficial for everybody. Yeah. So my husband had written the text in here is actually things that he said on Twitter, and it was always an observation of some silly thing Seamus had done, where that he just decided he would write the silly piece of advice and then tag it, A Guide to Being a Dog by Seamus Wheaton. And he did it for a year, and I think there's 50 in there.
I think that's right.
I think there were probably 65 total, and I just narrowed it down because some of them, after a year, some of them were like a little similar to each other, so I narrowed it down. But I decided to make it a book where Seamus is giving Marlo advice on how to be a dog. The tweets of Will's were just like, dog advice in general. But I did that, and then my friend Laura D'Souza illustrated it. And when I brought it for you, because I did this a couple of years ago, and when I brought it for you before I gave it to you, I was looking at it, I was like, I forgot how cute it is. It is so cute. And this raised $50,000 for them. So it's great, and we don't leave it. We don't make it available all the time.
I heard there was going to be another printing though.
Yeah, actually, I have some. It was just that if I left it available all year long, I would be constantly shipping, and I was, doing other things, and I had written a book of my own, and so I needed my time to go to that. So I do have a supply, and I'm going to make it available like middle of August to middle of September, because the Wiggle Waggle Walk is the end of September. And then I'm going to spend a very long time doing Seamus's Potograph in all of them.
Yeah.
And so what we do is people aren't buying the book. We actually have our own nonprofit charity that we call the Foundation to Increase Awesome, because you can name your charity anything you want as long as the name's available.
Nice.
So that's what we chose. So we did it through our foundation, and we just asked people to make it's a tax deductible 501c3, and so we asked them to make a minimum donation of $40, and then in exchange they got the book as a gift.
Awesome.
So our charity covered the cost of the shipping, and then we gave all the funds we raised to the Humane Society.
Yeah, and like speaking of your books, you have recently written another one called Piggy and Pug, which is adorable, and I love it so much. And I actually read it to my little brother the other day, and he's 6, and we both loved it so much. Good. It was amazing, and it facilitated this really amazing conversation about not just how important it is to rescue animals, but how important it is to find a place where you belong. And I just wanted to thank you a lot for doing that and facilitating those conversations and having such an amazing conversation with just a younger kid. And I was wondering if that was part of your master plan, writing the book.
It's interesting. So the Pug character is based off of that orange tabby cat that followed me home when I was 5. Yeah. And because I'd always thought of him as going out on that journey to find a family, I always kind of wanted that book to understand it. And then when I got older and doing more with because I acquired all these rescue animals over the years, but then when I started working with the shelter and seeing, like when the housing market crashed and the shelter would be full of animals that were owner turn-in. And at first I was really sad about that, and then I was like, oh wait, no, that's really responsible, because the other side of it is moving away and leaving the animal. So I just kept thinking of those families that had those animals, when they lost their home, they would have had to talk to their kids about losing those animals. So that was my inspiration for the book. I thought about it on and off for about 2 years, and then the entire story, I kept trying to figure out what the animals would be, because even though he's based off of my cat, the idea of writing a book about a cat that went out on an adventure on his own, I wanted more than it just being about finding a family, but also the friendship and teaching about animal empathy and pet owning responsibility and all that stuff. And I heard from several people. There was actually a resource teacher who she handles a lot of kids that both parents are on drugs or there's no support in the home, and that the kids really related to Pug going out and finding a new family, because what they teach the kids is sometimes the family you were born into may not be ideal for you, but as you get older, you can make your family out of who you meet along the way. And then when she said that, I was like, oh my God, I've done the same thing myself. And then I realized, that is another part of why that was so important to me, was to have that whole thing. And I love that kids understand that. So yay.
Thank you again for writing it. I did have another question about it. Your book obviously focuses on a pug, because it's called Piggy and Pug, and I was wondering about your thoughts on the importance of people researching breeds before they adopt a dog, because pugs are very infamous for their health problems, as well as other breeds like Great Danes and stuff can have a lot of stuff, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
So Seamus is a Great Dane Pit Bull mix. So when I saw him, he's 80 pounds. He's not as big as a Great Dane, but he is definitely bigger than a lab. He was my first pit bull. And when, all I ever heard about pit bulls in the news was, vicious animals, they attack kids, all this stuff. And so when we did that walk, and he had that little Adopt Me bandana on, and my husband was like, it was not long after our dog Ferris had passed away, and he was like, maybe we'll wait 6 more weeks to adopt a dog. And Seamus was so great with kids and other dogs and all that stuff that I feel like it was maybe the third person that was like, that dog's available for adoption, that my husband was like, we have dibs, and he took the bandana off of him. So that's how we got him. But then still I was just like a little apprehensive just because I didn't know the breed. So we didn't take him home from the walk because we still had to go through like the regular adoption process, filling out the paperwork, understanding the responsibility, making sure we had a yard that was fenced in and protected for him. But it also gave us an opportunity to look into the breed and to understand that they're very intelligent, they're very sensitive, they are so affectionate. He's 80 pounds and he thinks he's a lap dog and he tries to lay all the way across me. So we just understood that what we needed to do was train him, and then like with training, then he knows we are in charge. He doesn't feel threatened by anything because we are protecting him. I know that dogs do protect their owners, but pit bulls used to be called nanny dogs because they were so good with kids that they were very protective of them. Not that they would attack them. And honestly, working with the shelter, I discovered that the number one dog that bites people it's reported is Chihuahuas. It's not pit bulls. It's not pit bulls. And so Marlo is also a pit bull mix. She's mixed with American Foxhound, so she's much shorter. But because of knowing about the breed and knowing that they sort of like have a bad rap for no reason. When I was a kid, I got bit by a poodle, and I saw a woman who had a super aggressive golden retriever, and it's like, it's about how you treat them. If you have a very sweet, intelligent, sensitive child, and you treat them badly, they're going to grow up to be that bully. They're going to grow up to act out and treat other people badly and hurt them. And animals are the same way. Yeah. So especially with domesticated animals, it's important to know what you're getting and to know how to train them, and how when you're training them, you're also training yourself. Yeah. So then everyone's happy in the home, and then that's why the adoption process is also making sure that you know what you're doing, because the important thing is keeping the animal in the home.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, just I love animals so much, and it's so amazing that I get to talk to someone about them. But yeah, in your panel yesterday, which I went to, your Women in Geek panel, it was amazing, and you said something that I thought was really, really powerful. You talked about how you learned that being a geek is more than just loving like Star Trek or Doctor Who or something like that. It's loving something, and you love animals, and you want to know all sorts of stuff about it. Yes. And it reminds me of a quote from John Green that I love, which is about how nerd is the worst insult, because it's basically just saying you like things.
Yeah, I know. What is that?
I know.
It's silly. Like yeah. You are super passionate about something awesome to you. How dare you? Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird.
So weird, and it's awesome, and it was just such a powerful thing. And I wanted to thank you a lot for spreading that message, because it's really important to people. And yeah, I was wondering how you sort of discovered that for yourself, because it seems like something was hard to find.
To elaborate on that just for your viewers, that it's not about being a geek or a nerd about everything, that you can't, there's no way everyone's going to know everything. And then people that sort of like shame nerds for not being like the super Star Wars fan, it's like you can just be passionate about the thing that you love, and you don't have to know it all. And for years, I used to refer to myself as being nerd adjacent to my husband, because he's like the super nerd. But then I realized I am nerdy about some things of my own, and it doesn't have to even be like specific to geek culture. Yeah. So that's why I am 100% a nerd for animals. Yes. And I, like when I was a kid, like one of my first picture books was all about farm animals. My little, I think it was called See and Say, where you turn the dial and then it makes the cow goes.
Oh, yes. I remember those things so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that was my favorite. And then as an adult, I tend to go toward books that talk about animals. And so there's a really great book, and I am totally blanking on the name of the author, but it's called Wesley the Owl. And it's a woman that was working at Caltech, and she rescued a little barn owl. And so the whole story is not just about learning about barn owls and like how to raise them and their characteristics, but she learned a lot about herself in that. And then right now I'm reading a book called The Soul of an Octopus. And that is so cool, just to learn about how intelligent that animal is. Yeah.
So intelligent. But yeah, speaking of learning and kids things, you probably know that Denver Comic Con is a product of Pop Culture Classroom, which is teaching kids through pop culture and through stuff like that. So teaching literacy and all sorts of other topics. And I was wondering what your favorite kids series is besides stuff that you've done yourself, and I know you've done a lot of amazing stuff, but what you want to share with kids these days.
I think you mean like a specific book or just like in general?
Like a specific thing.
Okay. Well, my kids are in their 20s, so there's a lot of new books that I don't know that are out now.
It's fine.
But they're like, my kids really gravitated towards books about animals also. And there was a book called Harry the Dirty Dog that he got out of the yard, and he was a white dog and he got all dirty, and then when he came back, his family didn't recognize him until he got the scrub brush and ran to the bathtub, and they gave him a bath, and then they knew it was him. But just, I don't know, like when I wanted to write this book, I did look at a lot of children's books in like Barnes and Noble or something like that, and there were a lot of books that were just there wasn't really any. Not that every book needs to be a teaching moment, but there were a lot of books that were very like balloons and rainbows and everything. Let's feel great all the time. And I've heard from a lot of teachers and librarians who've said, it's still important for kids to learn things like empathy and all that stuff. And so, there's books like Charlotte's Web, and you learn about death and Watership Down and Where the Red Fern Grows and those kind of things. I feel like those things are really important. And even though, as a parent, you always want to protect your kids. You always want them to feel good about things, but it's also important to teach them and to educate them, not just on real life things, but teaching them things like compassion and learning about friendship and family. And so my kids loved like The Runaway Bunny, and I had books called Harold and the Purple Crayon. And I loved those. The Clifford books were always great. It's so good. Mike Mulligan and the Steam Shovel was one that my kids always loved to read. But it's weird to. I feel like I need to go and sit in like a kids section of a library and see what they're reading now, just to have more of that knowledge and that stuff.
Do you mind if I give you a quick book recommendation I think you would like?
Yes.
So it's this kids series. So it is very young, but it's called The Familiars, and it's about a wizard's bond with their familiar, but it's from the familiar's perspective.
Oh my
and
God,
so
that's great.
the main cat is a rescue cat named Aldwin.
Okay.
And he's a tuxedo, and it's a really amazing book series, and it's sort of built around, there's all these magical pets that were rescued, and they're in this pet store and they get adopted, and then their story is told. And it's not all about rescue animals, but Aldwin was a rescue, and that made me want to rescue my cat, because my cat looks like Aldwin.
Oh,
and
you have a tuxedo cat too?
Yes.
Mine, I do too. His name's Watson.
Yes, I love Watson. Mine is named Domino. He's so cute. Yes, I love animals so much. But thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and share about your animals.
Thank you.
I love them. They're adorable. And it's just absolutely amazing. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.